morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, wherever you are. Today, I have watched a video on YouTube called NUDC 2020 Judge Test Answers and Discussion. And now, I would like to deliver about what I have learned from that video. But before that, let me introduce myself. My name is Balqis Cahaya Kautsar. I am from the English department. I'm on the L team, and I am one of Fathurrahman's guided junior. And my explanation will be divided into three sections. The first one is true or false sections, then the short answers, and the last one is debate assessment. And debate assessment section is going to divide it into more sections. Like the first one is noticeable patterns to correct. The next one is ranking explanation, and the last one is the scoring breakdown. So let's just get into our first section, the true or false section. So what I have learned from this section is, as a debater, the first one is Prime Minister should define the important keywords from the motion, but it's not a must and it's fine if they do not do so. And closing teams can add examples and context as extensions. The only opposition team's duty is to oppose the motion, nothing else, like making a counter proposal or solve the problem. And logical argumentation is the most main important thing in debate, like how we explain and elaborate our argument and reasons, not facts or statistics. Just use facts and statistics in order to elevate our argument. And we should maintain consistency internally within our team and externally within our bench. Internally means within our team as the first speaker and the second speaker, and externally within our bench, like the opening or the closing bench. And as a panelist adjudicator, it is alright to change our decision after listening to other panelists' explanation. So we should do that if we need to do so. And that is what I have learned from the true or false section. We're getting into the short answer section. The first one that I have learned is, as a panelist, we better follow the chair decision and obey the NUDC rules. If the chair made any mistake or didn't do their job well, we could not divide the adjudication core about it after the round ends. But before that, we just need to follow their decision and obey the NUDC rules. And to make a rebuttal as an opposition team, that rebuttal has to prove that the government argument is wrong and not adequate. And if the opposing government provided a limitation, the only team that has right to widen it is the opening opposition. The closing team shouldn't knife the openings, they just should be consistent with it. And as an adjudicator, if we face similar arguments in nature by two teams from the same bench, we could make a decision by whose argument is more analyzed or detailed. Alright, that's all what I have learned from the short answers sections. We're getting into the last sections. This is the debate assessment, and this part is ranking and scores. So the result from the previous video is opening government in the first place, closing opposition in the second place, opening opposition in the third place, and closing government in the fourth place. I realized that I made such a big mistake by putting closing government on the first position yesterday. Before I explain the ranking explanations, I am going to explain the noticeable patterns to correct from the adjudicator first. The first one is, do not step into the debate. An adjudicator shouldn't be completing arguments on behalf of the debaters just because the adjudicator has heard or thought of a similar or even better arguments. This is my mistake while judging the previous competition. I added an argument about overpopulating or depopulating. I should have not done that, actually. And the second is, accent doesn't matter when it comes to best speaker. Just because they sound like a native speaker doesn't make them to be the best speaker. just the same as the ones that have a more local accent than the native accent. And adjudicators have to be fair. Everything has to be set in balance. If you put a burden on a team, you should put it on the other teams too. And while giving score, please read the speaker score scale as a reference, not just as a suggestion. And these are few things that show whether a point is valuable or not. The first one is relevancy. Was the argument is relevant or not? The second one is importance. Was it important to the motion? And did it explain why this motion should be a priority? So just because a point is new or distinct doesn't mean it's automatically valuable. And here I realized that while judging the previous video, the NUDC 2020 exhibition round, I did so many mistakes by judging them. Especially when I add, like I mentioned before, when I add an argument about population, I should have not done that. But after taking these notes, I can fix my mistakes for the future competitions. And alright, let's just get into the next subsections, the ranking explanations that I mentioned before. First is the opening government. Okay, I didn't realize how opening government were on top over all teams days before. And after watching the video, I can tell that opening government actually deserve to be in the first position. When being compared with the closing opposition, opening government's point of inaccurate measures stands strong until the end of the debate. Even though the closing opposition tried to debunk it, but it wasn't unsuccessful. So August's point really stands strong until the end of the debate. And the party of prime ministers, POI, successfully proved that the case of forced abortions was a straw man. So opening government successfully preempt all harms that coming from the closing opposition. Those all are the reasons why opening government is in an upper position over closing opposition. And about the closing opposition, so here, after I watched the video, I can see how closing opposition did really well on their characterizations, and they also had strong response to the previous argument, which is the opening government's argument. And about the opening opposition, we know that opening opposition is on an upper place than closing government, which they were on the third place. This happened because closing government didn't respond the opening opposition's case. And again, it's kind of crazy how I put closing government on the first place because I had no much knowledge about adjudicating. And about the closing government, the way I put the closing government on the first position on my previous video makes me realize that I still knew nothing about adjudicating mechanism. And I just take any team that sounds dominant to put it on the first position. Let's just get into the next subsections, the scoring breakdown. So this is our last subsections. First, I will start with the Prime Minister. So as a Prime Minister, Noni did such a great job by providing a strong setup and mechanization of the debate. And the party of Prime Minister, Rizky also gave strong responses towards the party of leader of opposition. He debunked all opening opposition's material, and his arguments and rebuttals were also really good. And about the opening opposition, the leader of opposition, Farah, had nice arguments too, but unfortunately, her arguments were not effective and uncomparative enough to the motion and Prime Minister principle. And about the party of leader of opposition, Tania's responses were defensive, but they were not uncomparative enough and still needed more explanation. And her elaboration was similar with leader of oppositions too. And the government member, well, Gio attempted to add some details on his harms, but unfortunately he failed to change the conclusion of the argument. And also his response to the opening opposition solution was kinda contradictory. And the government whip, Rio had such an interesting approach in his response, but There were a lot of loopholes in his point, and unfortunately, he brought a different focus on his speech. And about the opposition member, Steph made a critical response towards the closing government. He provided the explanations on the status quo mechanism's effectiveness, and he provided a distinct harm. He also had unique principled approach on women's bodily autonomy, primarily on the mental trauma. And this is the last one, the last speaker, the opposition whip. Darrell provided a new harm and attempted to revive the second extension of opposition member, but it was very assertive. Darrell also did such a great job to glorify his first speaker unique principle, but unfortunately, he didn't provide any comparisons on why it's most important in the round. And alright everyone, that's all what I have learned from the NUDC 2020 judge test answers and discussions, and how I reflect the discussion with my previous task. Well, in conclusion, I felt such a jaw-dropping how I really missed the way I judged this debate round. But it's okay, I'm still learning, and hopefully in the future I could be better with better knowledge for sure. And thank you for all of your attention. Thank you for paying attention. Thank you for listening. I really hope that I can be a better debater or educator in the future. And I really hope you're having a nice day. Thank you.